Well, that just happened. A few days later, nice warm weather, several days of rain, all of the snow is gone. It's the end of the first week of March. If you flash back to this time last year, I was jumping little quads off of piles of snow. Snow was taller than my head in the piles, so this is unusual. Pond hockey ice. Typical winters, it's the first week of March. You might get a couple of skates in on the pond ice first few days of March, maybe up to the end of March. We lost the pond ice 2 weeks ago, pushing 3 weeks ago. So really warm. Now, interestingly, storms coming in. I'm down on the river, so I don't think we're going to get a whole lot from an elevation point of view. But to the west of us up in the ski areas, foot and a half. And the mountains are a little obscured, so we'll see. Wind's picking up. But I got a little bit of time, so let's keep pushing this motor forward. You know, the plan wasn't actually to really work on the quad today, but this is the most beautiful day outside we have had in many months. It tells me it's 49 degrees, but with the sun, I mean, this is probably feeling like mid-50s, and it feels beautiful. And it's the first time I've had sun on my work area in a long time. And that is just nice. Having the tarp rolled up here gives me a chance to clean the space up and get organized. And if you've been following the channel for a while, you recognize I tend to do that where I pause it, I just reorganize, get things off the floor, make sure I know where everything is. So I do. I have my plastics on the wall now, a couple of parts hung up where I can find them easy. But I do want to mention something today. Have swapped on the rims here. We have taken off underneath here in the box are the 4-1 offsets. I have popped these up on eBay. I do have a small eBay store. There's not a lot on there, but here and there I do have takeoffs that are worth passing on to the community, or parts I find I can't use. In this case, I'm not going to use the 4-1 offset rims on here. I now have a set of 3-2 offset. So these 3-2 offset, if I come around, if you remember from previous videos, the 4-1, while they fit, it was, you had a centimeter's clearance, finger's width clearance over here with the way the 4-1s sat. Fine, perfectly fine. All the clearance was here. Do a nice job protecting your brake hubs, etc. But with those 4-1s, they sat so far inside these rear tires that even when the ATV is sitting down, and I could tell when you have a rider on it and full weight, the front end was still going to be narrower than the rear end. So with this setup, I have been playing around. I have tipped this down onto the ground, and without the motor and seat and all the other weight, literally I just was kneeling on the front bumper there, and there's enough squat that these come right out to the outside of this Tusk extendable axle. So I think we're going to be okay with these 3-2 offset and this Tusk. So I am waiting on a few pieces here, still waiting on those replacement lock washers, then we'll start getting onto the clutch basket. And we have some work to do on the clutch basket, and we'll touch on that in a few moments when I get set up to kind of do this next push here. But while I do that, a couple things. First, I just found a nut on the ice as I was walking over here. Where did I put it? There it is. That, oh boy, that looks a lot like something that should be holding a wheel on. Yeah, that's the right thread pattern. We're gonna peel off for a moment because this showed up out there, which implies I didn't drop it, didn't fall out of my tool case. That's where I've been riding this winter. I wonder that I lose a wheel nut because somebody's gonna get hurt bad if I have the wheel nuts come off. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go kart. 1, 2, 3. Mystery solved. All right, well, let's fix that and let's make sure that doesn't happen again. While we're out here, let me mention one more thing, and this is from a video a few videos back. Just want to follow up on. If you recall, a few videos back, I had some bolts on here that were starting to rust. Having been out here for the winter, you know, undercover, but still with the humidity in the air. If you recall, these engine mount bolts. This guy here was rusting up. Boy, was that one rusting, but at least this guy was. Remember that. So this video here is, boy, 4 or 5 weeks since I filmed that other video, at which time I stopped and I went back and started re-dipping, or I missed some bolts. I shouldn't say re-dipping, I just flat out hadn't dipped them in Caswell sealer. Here's another example. Down here, this guy had rusted up as well, so I took all this apart, retumbled, polished a few of these just so they wouldn't get that rust. So now we're looking 4 and 5 weeks later from there, and this stuff, the penetrating sealer, it's done its job. I don't have any more rusting up here. So that was another one of those little pieces where I had to go back a step just to make sure, just to touch things so they held together. But it worked. You know, just kind of putzing around. Nice day. Not really working on the ATV, but setting a few things in so I can see and sometimes anticipate challenges. And I've decided this challenge is worth sharing here as I figure this one out. The ProPeg Nerf bars. If you saw this blaster in its original iteration, I did have these on in the OEM configuration. A few things of note. You get these big, thick plates on these ProPegs. You know, this is a lot of mounting meat right here. Okay, same on the other side. Here's where my challenge comes in. This side, the ProPegs, you know, they've really been designed for this big meat. You know, this mounting bracket is set back. You know, it's got that big offset there to head in. And when I look here, okay, so I have the HPM bracket, but really, if I set this in and I get a good camera angle, I could get on the inside of the frame here, drill a hole through that bracket, and then I can get my U-clamps in there on this side. And I think that's ultimately what's going to happen is we're going to get a Sharpie go through there. We're going to hit it with a drill. We'll clamp, and this side is good. The other side's where, you know, this is where customization comes in. So when I had done this before, I was running the OEM cable pull rear brake, and now I have the kit from CTI. So I have another plate in here. And this plate and that distance there seems to be enough to throw me off on the front right, where I'm right on top of the frame. And if I get some muscle on here and I try and flex things in, I get close, but I'm still putting a hole in a frame. Really what I need is I need that width back. So I'm thinking about this. Now, as I think about it, I wonder, could I swap this plate onto the outside? Now, if I put the plate on the outside, my brake lever is going to have some issue because it's going to get caught up underneath here. So I don't think that there is any way that I can take the CTI plate, put on the outside of the ProPeg without running into issues with, you know, the webbing and just there's just no way there. Where I think I may have the opportunity is this big thick plate. Take it off. You know, take a Sharpie down in here and mark the overlap between the CTI plate and the ProPeg plate and grind this plate down. Take some of the meat out of it. I mean, I've got a whole lot of room there. And my feeling is that I could take the width of the CTI plate out of here. CTI plate would basically then sit in flush underneath the ProPeg. And I think I can do it. I mean, a little tough to see here, but when I think of the peg, this guy, the peg here, I do think I can get underneath there, because the other thing I can do is I can take a little bite right there out of the CTI. And then we repaint things black, and I get that distance back. And the idea being that this will go in enough for the U-bolts. That's a little bit of work, but it's not impossible. It is not impossible. There's probably an hour there. Take it off, pop it in the vise. Frankly, hit it with a grinding wheel. Yeah, hit it with a grinding wheel. On the CTI bracket, I just got to take a little moon off the top, and it certainly isn't going to compromise any of the integrity of it. So, okay, and I got a lot of meat I can play with on that Pro Peg mount, and I think it's the same thing. I'm just going to touch into it with the grinder, get it down, mock it in. Once I get happy, we'll hit it with some paint, so you won't even know. We'll drill a hole through our HPM mount up there, put our U-bolts in, and we'll have Pro Pegs. There it is. There's the mission. Black Sharpie on black, plenty straight line through there. I've got to take the meat out of here so this plate can sit down into a recess there. Give me that space back. And you see, I just touched with the Sharpie kind of the idea of the bite I want to take out, so that when it sits in the recess, it sits around the peg here. There's the mission. Well, it's not going to get done with me just looking at it, so I'm going to stare at it a little bit longer as I think through my plan here, because it's a one-shot type thing. Make sure I'm happy with my plan, and then we're going to do it. And then, that'll be one more thing taken care of as we keep moving forward. So nice not to have cold fingers on metal these days, though. All right, we do have things laid out here. I do have a small heater going off beside me here just to take the chill off, and it helps to warm the tools. Cold metal on fingers is just rough out here, and everything is cold. It's 40 degrees Fahrenheit, so this is nice to have. Let's pick up where we left off. Where we left off, over here. Let's see, this doesn't go here. This I gotta put away. Getting ready to do some grinding. I got a few things to pick up and show you here this morning. Getting ready to grind this down when we left, and I paused and I went to talk to the community. I popped on the forums, and actually the owner of CTI popped in there and said, "Oh, just get the different foot peg, the Gen 2 foot peg from the manufacturer of the Nerf bars, in this case XFR." So I reached right out to XFR, and that was exactly the case. They're like, "Yep, you need a Gen 2 foot peg. I've got one coming in the mail. That should be here in a couple of days." So I paused on getting these Nerf bars on and all of that tear down and grinding. Now, unfortunately, I had already started modifying here and cut off the post that was here for the Gen 1 brake mount. Also in the pile here, we have a few pieces. We needed a different size adapter for our leak down tester. So here from HPM, we have a billet one, which will fit the Pro line so that we can actually do a leak down test. So that's what that is for. Also in here, got an air freshener. Thank you, HPM, and a lighter. I'll need that when I light my campfires out there. I mean, to confess, I usually use MAP gas to light the fires because I'm a little lazy on getting my kindling in there, and I just hit it with excessive heat. But nonetheless, appreciate it. Down in here should be the two locking washers that we need to get going on the other side of the motor. And this is also where we left off. We'll talk about this as well. The other piece, basket. Now, I ended up pulling the trigger on a Wiseco basket with everything we're putting in here, with the stroker crank, with the porting and polishing, rechambered head. Plan was to use this existing basket. And let me show you something on here. This basket has already been through a little bit of repair. And okay, on camera you can get a good angle there. You can see that this was really, the clutch fibers had worn down into the lobes here. And I have partially sanded this down. So it feels smooth to the finger. And I could run this again, and you can get away with just taking a file, and I have other videos you've seen me do it. Just follow the angle and take the ridges off. What happens with those deep ridges when you're trying to shift and clutch, the fibers they're stuck down in those ridges, and your shifting is really difficult. So you can smooth it out, keep riding. That said, the more you smooth this out, the more you take off over years of trying to maintain the basket, you start to get play. This gap gets wider here, and as you're doing clutch drops or just shifting, your fibers have room to just kind of smack and move, and it just really kind of accelerates the wear. So considering what we're putting into this, if this was a stock motor OEM build, I would run this. I would just, as it is, nice and smooth, follow the angle, because you don't want to take the angle off here or make it sharper, because that'll just also accelerate wearing. If this was sharper, it's less less material for those fibers to hit. If this was, think of it like a blade, you just flatten it right out. But because we are building this motor up, we're going to set this basket aside. Now, to do this, we will have to drill out these 3 grommets because we need to get the gear off the back. This has got to come off because within here, our Wiseco basket, this comes with the replacement screws, and they give me a spare one here. I need 3, there's 4, so nice to have that. I have to mount that gear on the back here. So that's what that's all about. Boy, that feels light too. Now, another thing you'll notice on this Wiseco here, and actually, nice example, nice and smooth within these lobes. The friction, the clutch plates, they're just going to slip and slide right up and down there, so it should be very nice and smooth shifting. Notice these holes. With this clutch basket, you're going to get more oil down in here in the fibers, helps keep the clutch cool. So it takes out the weight, but also serves a function. If I were holding on to this clutch, I would drill 1, maybe 2 small holes in here if I were looking to reduce that weight and get better airflow, or excuse me, not airflow, oil flow down in the clutch fibers on the back here. I was planning on doing that until I changed tact, but I'm not today. Now, it's important you don't make holes in that basket that are too large, because you're weakening that structure there. So a little bit, okay, too big, you could get that snapping off. And again, if one of those lobes snaps off, that can do a lot of damage rattling around down in the case. I'm looking at this here. I'd be doing 3/16 feels big. If I were doing 3/16, I'd put 1 hole. 2, I think, would be just too much. But again, this is one guy's opinion. So ask around what other folks might be doing there. It's possible, you know, between that, you know, boy, yeah, 3/16 feels a little big there. I might even be more comfortable just doing an 1/8 inch in there just to get some of that oil flow. But again, we're not doing it. We have this guy, which has plenty of oil flow for cooling, is lighter, is stronger. We have a built blaster motor here, so this is the move. I am noticing something as soon as I hop in here. I think I have the wrong part. I think I have two of the same, and these should be two different lock washers. 90215, I do. So that implies I don't think it's going to fit. It's not going to fit. Wrong size. It looks like I have two for the clutch basket. This guy here, perfect, but I don't have one for my counterbalancer. So we're a little stuck again today from moving forward. So we'll have to pivot and do supporting work in here while I get the right one there. So recognizing that, let's flip the motor over and let's work on the stator side. Let's see if we can get that closed up today. So we had to do some milling and some sanding, etc., around the side of the stator plate because the casting was pretty poor. We have it set down in here. Now we need to adjust the timing before we bolt it in. Looking down in here, and what we're eyeballing, if I grab this, the lower part of this lobe, that's what we want to line up against. So if I want to advance timing versus retard timing, where I am right now, this is the +5, -5. We want to advance, and guys run between 3 and 4 degrees advanced timing there, and that's really exactly where I am. I might even call that 3.5. I'm going to call that 3 degrees of advanced timing. So I'm literally going to bolt this down. I may be able to, there we go, we're through. And we're through, and I do have some anti-seize already on these threads, so we're going to get this down, tightened in, and then we'll keep moving on. Why would somebody advance or retard timing in here? So in its simplest form, advancing the timing shifts where I'm going to call it the power hits. So if you want the power to hit in the higher RPM, you advance your timing. If you want the power to hit in the lower RPM, retard your timing. Something to note, if you advance too far, you can get knocking, pinging in a motor, and it can be destructive, absolutely destructive. The other thing to understand is that advancing the timing can also increase heat. And this is an air-cooled motor, so there's something to be said there. On other ATVs, some of my 4-strokes that have trouble starting, I might retard it just by a touch, like one tooth on a 4-stroke. Easier starting on some of those old motors, and I get that power shifting to the lower RPM. So some of my workhorse ATVs, some of the Moto 4s and the Big Bear, but I lose that from the high end. If I am hard on that throttle, it can feel a little almost sluggish in that. So I'm going to end up playing around with this as I get this motor up and on the trails here. Do I like +3 advance? Does 0 make more sense because I'm riding slower, there's less airflow on it, and I want my power hitting more in the lower RPM because I'm trail riding? It's an area I don't have a lot of hands-on experience moving the timing or advancing the timing other than on the old Moto 4s and Big Bears, some of them retarding by 1 just to get easier starts, particularly in the winter and all that. Which ideally I shouldn't even have that trouble. If I have good carburation, good jetting and everything, it shouldn't matter. But sometimes with some of these old 80s machines, that's what it is. So we're putting this at +3, bolting it in and moving forward. But that's why, and I suspect I'll play with that down the road. I just thought of something here that gave me another reason to pause. Lapping the flywheel. Now if I'm going to lap it, might be easier to not have the stator in here. Swinging back to the left. Put my Woodruff key, all that down here. This is the OEM. Essentially what I would end up doing is putting a little bit of valve grinding compound in here, setting it on and spinning it. Now, I paused because this is the stator that came off of this motor and was fitting fine. However, I'm putting a different stator back in here. I'm putting this one. This one's lightened. This one has never sat on this shaft, and you see just from kind of hanging out over the winter, there's a touch of rust down in there. So I'm going to lift the stator plate off. I am going to put a little bit of valve lapping compound in here, drop it on, spin it, clean everything up, and that way when this goes on, presses on, we get a nice, strong mate between the male and female sides on here so that we hopefully don't blow anything up. So let me set that up. Now I do want to be careful. I don't want this valve grinding compound getting down on the seals in there that I so carefully pulled together. That's all that I have on there. Now my lightened flywheel. See how this is going to get that all cleaned up down in there. I've got a touch of downward pressure. I am choosing to spin this either direction, forward, reverse. 15 seconds or so. That's all I'm doing. Now we're going to carefully get this all out. Getting the big stuff out, and then I'm going to hit this with some carb cleaner. Because again, you don't want valve grinding compound sitting inside a motor case. You just, yeah, don't let that happen. Alright guys, I am happy with that, just a touch of lapping. Alright, here we go, back to the overhead view. Flip my hat around in the hope that I don't get it in the camera here. And here we go, back to the stator. Dropping this stator in. Getting my lineup here for, here comes my head again, +3. Get the rubber grommet. +3, okay. Now, if you remember, these were 70 inch-pounds, which 70 divided by 12 for foot-pounds will give you 5.8 foot-pounds. So we have these two, and where am I set at the moment? Make sure that I am right. I am at 5. So we're going to do that. Bring these in on this 5mm hex head into 5. There's 1, 2. Leaving them at 5. Now we come around to finding how tight of a fit this lightened flywheel going to be. And again, this is 8 ounces. A lot of these are lightened to 6 ounces that you'll find. TK's Parts did this one for me at 8 ounces. So we're pushing a little bit here. I think I'm going to have to take my gloves off to get the dexterity. Get my Woodruff key sitting in here. Now, in doing this, it might be a little difficult to see. I don't have that Woodruff key perfectly perpendicular. The front side of that is cantilevered in towards the shaft here. Once everything slides over, and as it slides in, it's going to cantilever it back out. Pardon my head. All right, I'm happy with that. Now, something you don't want to forget, because in this case it's sticking. You have this big washer. Sets down. Don't forget that. That can throw things off. Now have our nut, and let's check our torque spec on this one. Oh, let's see. Where's our flywheel? Clutch, kickstarter, transmission, crank. You know, here's where I'm losing my mind a little bit. Looking around because I can't find a torque spec for this this flywheel nut coming off of the crankshaft. Came back here to see if there's anything under F for flywheel. Nothing. The motor area, this section 2.1, is everything that I have here. Clutch, crankcase, engine, general, kickstart, oil pump, piston rings, transmission shafts, balancers. Okay, we'll take a look on page 20 there. But cylinder, reed, cylinder, pistons, and rings. This is where I've been getting all of my other torque specs. Engine, I get clutch nut, primary gear nut, counterbalance shaft nut, shift pedal pinch bolt, crankcase screws, but nothing for the flywheel nut. And look at, I'm pretty old school here. I have a flip through manual. And boy, these pieces, this paper is thin. The closest things, primary gear, 58 foot-pounds. The smaller one, counterbalancer, 40 foot-pounds. And those are the big ones. Clutch nut 58. We're on the other side there. I'm somewhere between 40 and 58 foot-pounds in my head. So for you guys that do this, pop it down in the comments if you've got the exact one there. I'm going to go to 40 today with some blue Loctite. Let me start warming this up in front of my heater there. We're going to go to 40. And if I learn that 40 is not going to need to be, this should match the other side at 58. I'll end up putting it in the overlaying on the screen if I know before this video goes live. Otherwise, I'll put it in the comments if it's something different. Another tusk tool here. This we'll use again when we're torquing down on our clutch basket nut in this case. And you don't want to clamp on these. You just got to hold it is all it is. So taking a lot out. On the other side, I have these protrusions that can drop right down in. This is going to allow me to get on this and get that torque in there. Give it a little more. All right. Okay. Paying attention here. One of my flipping the motor around, my rubber grommets came out. There we go. 1 grommet, 2 grommet. This one now. Now we stop and think a little bit. Might have a little additional machining to do because we're going to pop on an HPM case saver. And I might have to do a little cutting here. All right. New territory with this case saver here. We have this guy, and I have never used an HPM case saver. So we're going to see what it takes to get this guy on with this cover here, and then we should be able to get this side of the motor buttoned up. Guys, this is pretty cool. I've never run one of these case savers before, but I don't think there's any cutting needed, any modification. I think this is going to slip right in here. Why run a case saver? Boy, I think I've gotten rid of the good examples that I have, but I can show you what happens. If you ever throw a chain, and if I pull this off quickly, just lift it out of the way here. If you ever throw a chain or it pops off, you can just destroy this part of the case. And I've worked on buddies quads that have had this all built up with JB weld or just big holes punched here. Behind here obviously is your linkage for releasing the clutch. This guy, you know, so this is what's sitting back behind here. So the idea being, and what happens when you throw a chain, if that chain kinks, all this rotational mass, that kink just punches right through here. So the idea with the case saver is to sit down close enough so that if your chain, you know, breaks, etc., it just gets fed all the way through and out. So the idea is something's going to sit there with enough clearance for your chain to feed through, and if that chain were to break, it can't bind up. It's just going to feed and get ejected out the bottom. So I'm going to bolt this in. To bolt in this case saver, I've got to remove this case nut or case bolt down here. So we'll mount on one side and then the other side, and then we should be, you know, protecting ourselves and our nice cases and all the work we've done. This, I mean, different folks make them, but a case saver is some of the cheapest insurance you'll get for a nice motor. Don't overlook a good case saver. Back this one off, and remember, we'll do this again at that 5.8 foot-pounds. And again, everything in here has the anti-seize, making my life easier every time you work on something like this again. We'll just reuse that one because it looks like it's the same. The HPM kit includes replacement. Aha, okay. So the HPM is slightly longer, just a touch there if you see that, because we have to make up the distance of this plate. So I'm going to get some anti-seize on here, and we're going to swap this bolt out. Do this right. Make sure we have enough bite down in there into the case. And because it's hidden behind here, I'm going to spin off this mount for the moment. Let's get this guy torqued down in. And again, we've been at 5.5 on that 5.8 because my torque wrench isn't digital. So now we have this post in, torqued down. The case saver narrow piece up towards the top. We have this spacer that came with it. It's going to sit down in this hole here. Let's do the same thing though with the anti-seize. Another way you can kind of think of it is this nice HPM logo. Logo's going to look at you. Now I am noticing something here. I think you can see on the camera. I had casework done up on here. This tab had snapped off. This here, not uncommon to see on the Blaster cases, but in my case had snapped off. And I was able to get TK's parts to weld this on for me when he did the case repair. Now, as I go to do this, I've got it bumping up just a touch. That's going to give me a little bit of a clearance issue. So I'm going to grab my air grinder and just take a touch off. Just a touch. We don't need much, but we got to do a little something here. While I was waiting for my air compressor to fill up and kick off, I've got that little, I don't know, what is that, 6-gallon right there. It runs through air pretty quick. Hopefully I'm going to have my 80-gallon air compressor up shortly. I started putting the sprocket on here. Now the sprocket has these two 10mm bolts. Put that in. I do have blue Loctite behind here. Here's another one that I don't find a spec, a torque spec on here. So I do have blue Loctite. I am going to bring these down to 5 foot-pounds. Just that's what we're going to do. But again, if you guys, if you know, those of you that have built many of these motors, if you know of a spec or your manual is more up to date than my Haynes manual here, throw it in the comments and I'll get it up in the description for all of us for the future. So now that we have this, let me torque this before the Loctite sets up, and then we'll touch this here. Another handy use for this tool, set it right down in some of the gear teeth. And again, don't go crazy clamping, just get a grip on it. But just like that, we can now get enough oomph for 5 foot-pounds. You don't want these coming off on the trail. That just wrecks your day. You'll never find it. There we go. Just needed just a little touch there. And again, this was custom done. Just needed a touch. Here we go. We've got our rubber gasket still all the way around here to seal this up. You don't want water getting in here. If water gets in here, it can kill your spark. I've had, where I haven't had it sealed up well, blast through a big puddle, water gets in, boom. You're sitting in water and yeah, make sure this is sealed up well. Intact rubber gasket all the way around. All the metal grommets are down in here. Moment of truth. Needs just a touch of just a touch here. I'll show you. So I do need to take a little bit off. Right across here, and that's where the original chain guard piece, you can see those are the grooves in there from that chain guard. So if I cut that right off, it should sit right down flush, and this piece will sit right on the outside. Just that. Easy peasy, easy peasy. I mean, really, what we're looking to do is cut that lobe down flush. Yeah, I think that's all we need to do is cut that flush, and we sit right down in. Now let's not nick our rubber gasket in this process. We're going to lift that right off. I guess a little unconventional there. I thought about trying to do a file, but I did not want the file catching the edges here. I tried to use my 5-inch grinder, come in, and that did a little bit, but you know, a little vibration could really goof things up, so that wasn't ideal. So ultimately, just some deburring tools and a small cut-off air grinder wheel did the trick. Definitely made a little bit of a mess out of this one. It's going to be, I don't know if I'll use that for cutting metal, because all that melted plastic in there is going to leave a mess, but it did what we needed today. Bingo! There we go. We're going to sit down flush. What I'm going to fight over here is that rubber grommet from the stator cover. But now we can get everything sealed in tight. We'll put our screws in finger tight. We'll check our torque spec, and we'll see where we land here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All have anti-seize. And all 5 are the same length, and this is the stainless kit I got from HPM as well. This quad, if you follow the channel, I picked up in milk crates, unassembled and blown up. So a lot of hardware was missing, so hence the need to pull some of this together. Now, digging through the manual as well, this is another one that I don't find a torque spec for, but I can also understand that. This is a plastic cover. It has this thick rubber seal around it. So I'm fine going down to, you know, kind of a half a grunt type scenario to seal this up and looking at it rather than cranking down. Just looking for that nice seal in there, and I'm seeing it. I'm comfortable with it, and I can get a sliver of light from where I did the work, trimming it down so I know that it's not forcing everything apart. So we're looking good, and I like that I'm able to put this case saver on and keep the look of the original case on here. I think that's pretty neat, and I gain that extra protection so I don't punch a hole around the clutch actuator. Happy. So we're starting to do more details on this side, but while we're here, I have a seal to press in around the shift shaft, and we're going to do that now. And again, we're going to do that same thing. We're going to grease the inside, a little bit of blue Loctite on the outside, press it in. That one's just a finger press in. Shift shaft. Let's spin it around. Now, as this goes in, I put a little bit of oil on here. If your shift shaft gets bent, you know, it's a pain to get through, and it's not uncommon for it to happen when guys are romping down on the shifter, and often they're romping on the shifter because, again, coming down back to the clutch basket, it's been worn so deep into these fingers that the fibers aren't able to slide up and down to disengage. Other place to watch in your inner clutch boss in here, same thing, to a much lesser extent than what happens out here. But guys, they see that shifting trouble and they're clutching in, they stomp on it, and they actually bend this and create all kinds of problems for themselves down the road. This one's going in just fine, so we're okay. Now, let's see. We need to get this to press over. It's going to sit over 2 of the tines on your modified shift star. I think you can see that in there now. There's the shift star behind, and we've got a catch on one side, catch on the other. And the idea is we have rounded out shift star. A lot easier when you are shifting to roll up and over as opposed to going over that spike. All right, I've actually gone up on my little blocks on the bench here. Added a 2x4 and another one on top of my 4x4 so that I don't want to press my shift shaft back out. But I wanted to show you how this all sets down in here. So once the shaft presses down through, each end of this lobe catches on 2 of the protrusions coming off of your shift star. Now, as you're looking down through here, when you shift and when you press your shift foot down, this pulls down, spins the star, or when you press up, or press it down, it's going to pull this up, spin your shift star, press it down, it's going to pull the other way. But now what we have this spring-loaded arm here sitting in the detent right there. And now, so I'm in first gear sitting here. This is neutral. This is 1. But when I go to 2, 3, I now get to roll over this smooth out shift star. See if I can get in there. And this is the work we did earlier as opposed to it being sharper. So this is going to be a smoother shift experience. And going to be a lot smoother shift experience as well with that nice, smooth, new Wiseco clutch basket. So I guess there's a question here. What do I want to work on next? Because I don't have the right locking washer there. I can't finish up building the clutch. I do need to do clutch basket work, drilling things out to get that Wiseco in, and that's just slow, mundane type stuff. Or I can start putting the top end on here. I think what I'm going to do at the moment is I'm going to start on the clutch basket, so that's ready to go to get this bottom end sealed up. We'll see how far things progress, but I'm going to keep going there and hope this storm doesn't roll in on me when I'm not looking. I think we're okay for a bit. The wind is picking up out here. Try to give you guys a few different angles to keep it interesting here. So we gotta drill out 1, 2, 3. So let's go ahead and see if we can give these a whack close to center as we can, so our drill bit doesn't walk all over the place. Oh, doobie, 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 doobie. We need power. Let's start small. Going 3/16. I feel like I started some of these a little too quick, which had my drill bit bend a little bit, which means it walked off my center dimple, so it's going to be a little slow going for some of these. This one's my best one, so I'm going to start here. That's one started, and I'm gonna have to keep stepping up in size until that thing collapses and comes out. So I'm just gonna get to work. Many a friend and coworker over the years has accused me of going the long way to get something done. And I think today is another example of that. Grinding through here, and the ones where I didn't get my punch right on the center, well, the drill bit was trying to wander, and as it tries to wander, this gear is hardened steel. And we're not drilling that, so this was starting to really fall apart. Then I took my grinder. You see me down there on my knees. I didn't want to throw grinding sparks at my clean work. Taking the back of the rivet off here ever so lightly so I don't goof with the balance of this gear. I'm going to try and bang this through, having taken it off. And this one I did drill all the way through, so it might be a little easier. We're going to give this a whack. Oh, and it's going to move. Question's going to be... yeah, it moved. That's a little too big. But we have a plan now, so try and find a punch. All right. Yeah, ha ha. Before we get too deep into this, let's clean up some of this mess. Now, as we lift this up, we get the rubber cushions. A little interesting, I have different types in here. 2 of them are circular, 2 of them are kind of D-shaped. And I don't see a difference in this that would make me see a reason for one versus the other. And let's get the other fellas out here. If they want to, maybe they don't. The reason I want to get all this out is because this gear is going to have to be cleaned up, certainly with some carb cleaner, to get all of the little shavings off from all the work we've been doing, the grindings, etc. Now these don't look bad. They have their original shape. They're not grooved in the center here. The idea for this is when you're doing, if you're doing just dumping your clutch, there's a little bit of give before you get onto the gears, and that's enough to absorb to keep you from blowing up. Well, helps take some of the cushion off when so you don't blow up a clutch. Okay. Nice thing is the instructions in here covers a number of different clutches. You know, you got a 6-bolt pattern, a 4-bolt pattern, you know, a few others. Ultimately, pretty simple here. Here's our 3-bolt pattern. Here's how we're going to lay out our D rubber grommets, I'll call them, and our circular ones down in the gear. 3 of the nuts are going to go through the plate. Also, do not reuse the gasket on the back here. Calls that right out in here. When you're done putting this in, it doesn't give any type of torque spec or require use of any lock type, but what it's calling for is to peen the nuts, or excuse me, peen the bolts afterwards. You know, a hammer and something like a punch right on the edge there to put a little dimple in the side so they can't back the threads out. And if you were looking super carefully in there, these aren't like perfect D's. There's a longer lobe, and that longer part of the lobe goes towards that outside. So it's I'll bring it up close here. Notice that's not perfectly symmetrical. This side here is a little longer than this side. The longer side is on the outside of the basket. We line it up, then we sit like so. Now before we do it, we got to go hit this with carb cleaner. I want this all nice and clean. Okay, carb cleaned. Press our little rubber grommets back in. Of course, the gear comes up towards you. Now our plate. Make sure our plate's clean. Noticing now that these screws have a little bit of red Loctite already on them, so they are going to have some grip as they get in there. It's a little tiny Allen key. That's a 3 mil. Because of the way these sit, for me, peening is going to be a little difficult. I'll give them a whack, but I am going to put a Loctite in here. I don't want these backing out. It'd be hard to see them back out because you'd have to take the whole clutch off. And this isn't something I intend on taking apart anytime soon. Now blue is a medium Loctite. There are others, but we're adding to the little bit of red that's on there already. I know it doesn't call for it. It did come with this nice I am going to gently see if I can put 5 on here. I don't want to break anything. I don't think we're going to get 5. I think we'd end up snapping things the way it's set up, so reason for that, the peening. There's no torque spec, and I'm not confident. I'm not going to break something if I even tried to get just a baseline torque spec on there. So in this case, to do my peening, I have a flat corner punch. I'm going to go in, kind of settle on the center in here, whack it out to the side. So it's tough to see. I swapped up to the pointed one so I could get this on an angle and whack it. And really the idea is kind of mushroom the threads out a little bit. There she go. She ready. I'll also mention as well, you can get these clutch baskets with the gear on them already from Dirt Fanatics. So you don't have to do this work yourself, but if you wanted to, that was, I don't know, 30 minutes for me. And ultimately, the thing is just grind off the back, punch it through, and you're rocking and rolling. Don't try and drill through. That was just a wrong way to do it. I guess not a wrong way, but a slow way of doing it. As I get closer to parking this video, we're not going to get all the way to getting the top end on because we need that one more piece there. But we'll talk about one more thing around the clutch here. So now we have our basket, and our inner boss is in good shape here. You know, looking at for any grooving in here, running my finger, it's fine. You can see a little discoloration, but it's smooth under my finger. Keep my washers together there. I have my new clutch basket washer. I abandoned this one even though there's a lot here. There's a crack, at least on this side, and you know, I could have bent up, etc. But if this lobe were to break off, any of those pieces and they get in there, cause a lot of damage. So again, we're putting a lot of time into this motor. I might run this on an OEM build. Just be careful to make sure I get good bite and leave everything so it doesn't snap off. But we're not doing that. Honestly, this is cheap insurance. You know, so it's do what you will if you're kind of fixing in the backyard, but not today. So clutch pack, you have 7 clutch fibers. Let me put some gloves on. What I want to do here is I want to pick which clutch fibers I'm going to use, because looking at these, they look like they are okay for reuse. But we're going to measure these for tolerances. Now, what I wanted to point out, usually in your clutch pack, you have one that is a little different. The diameter is bigger. It's a thinner clutch fiber than the others. Typically, there's one and it has this spring in the center. And when you're swapping out clutch, new fibers, a lot of guys, if they have an extra large fiber ring, they'll swap this one out and put a new one in. Done a number of clutches, so I have some extra rings lying around. So we're going to measure everything for tolerances, and if we're happy with it, that's what we're going to do. We're going to run this clutch pack. But let's see here. So there is a spec for this. Spec in here. Clutch push rod free. Plate thickness, a standard 2.92 to 3.08 millimeters. There's a limit. It's too thin at 2.8, so we want to be between 292 and 308. And we're going to zero this guy out. Inches, millimeters, zeroed. And we're just going to start taking a few measurements along the thickest part of the pad. 315. We'll do 2 measurements on each from approximately opposite sides. If I'm doing well there, 3.17. Batteries are a little low. This one came off a different clutch pack, so this is where I'm interested. This came off a clutch that blew up. 3.2. And the other thing to think too is with the oil, these can swell a little bit. 3.1. Now I'm reading those numbers. It just said the limit 3.08, and these are all acting like they're basically brand new, not worn down. They've been in oil, so they've swollen a little bit. 3.08, right on the money with this one. So I am going to mix some clutch fibers from 2 clutch packs, and I'm going to take out the thinner one here. And this little spring here kind of helps. If your clutch is a little sticky, this spring helps separate the clutch fibers so things don't stick together. But we're not going to run that one. And we'll go through stacking these through here and watching for these lobes to be offset in another video, because for now I am losing the light. We've accomplished a fair amount on the motor build. I'm just setting this back together so I can put this off to the side. All right, tools are put away until another evening. Got things laid out for the next time we come around. Put things back out. We'll work through our clutch side, build this all up, get into our top end. We have to talk about a few things there because we're doing a 3mm stroker. We do have a spacer plate that'll go on. Carburetor. We have more work to do, but we accomplished a fair amount today, and everything's put away in here. So we'll flip the lights out. We'll get the ATV covered up because there is snow coming. It's not here yet. Well, maybe rain for us, but mess coming, whatever it is. And that'll be that. We'll get that one last lock washer that eluded us today, and we'll be one step closer to putting this motor in here and then stepping forward. Thanks for watching, guys. If you have comments, questions, dump them down in the comments. Little things I've asked about here. Oh, I left the light on. Little things like some of the torque specs, some of that. I'll try to get information down in the comments to keep things accurate for anybody kind of following along doing the build. It's a great build, great learning process. Some of this is new to me, but I can't wait to get this out and start ripping once we get out of this crazy mud season. Oh, nasty. Yep, storm came in. It's snowing now.